When I looked at the cost of operating a sub, it's the ship. The two things that drive the cost of submersible operations. It's not the replenishing the oxygen or the carbon dioxide score, but that's nothing. It's all about the ship, and the next most important thing is mobilization. How do you get the stuff from one location to another? That's 90% of your cost. To other submersibles, what the iPhone was to the BlackBerry.
But many of its components seemed surprisingly cheap. For views outside the sub, he had installed store-bought security cameras. As for the ceiling lights,
I got these from Camper World.
and then there was the steering unit.
We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Come on! Like, a lot of the way you made this is by taking off-the-shelf parts and sort of MacGyvering them together.
Yeah, pretty much.
Does that not raise anybody's eyebrows in the industry?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I'm definitely an outlier.
In his interview with David Pogue from CBS, Rush also said, "As we say, we're in the risk business, but we risk assets, not people. It's not about avoiding risk, it's just making sure you're risking time or money, but not people." But I do think somewhere along the line he forgot that he was actually risking people because he'd already lost so much money.
And as an experienced engineer and operator of submersibles with over 25 years of experience, why do you think they dismissed your concerns?
The cost cutting, bad engineering decisions, I would say that's the two main things. The desire to get to the Titanic as quickly as they could to start making profit.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head.
When we examine the very obvious flaws in the carbon fiber hull, as well as the very clear signaling taking place, on the one hand the danger, the sheer scale of the risk Stockton was taking, and he knew he was taking a major risk, it seems strange, mysterious, even inexplicable that he didn't simply pack up and head home. But once we examine the financial narrative, it becomes a lot more comprehensible why Stockton acted as rashly as he did. And if we're honest, if we were in the same situation, financially I mean, we may also have been tempted to do the unthinkable. Before we get to the rest of this analysis, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. I often ask you guys to hit the thanks button, and I just want to say thank you to Anka. Kudos to Anka. This is the only super thanks I could find in the previous video. Thanks very much for that. Anka from, it looks like, Australia. I also want to mention, I've been covering the Barry Morphew case, and I actually spent hours just trying to find the footage that I shot when I was in the area. Now, while many other channels simply covered the press conference, just covered the news, I actually went to a lot of work just to find my own footage from my own archives from 2023 and 2024, when I was in Colorado and Indiana. And then I actually got a comment from someone who said, "You look like a creep. I hope they revoke your visa." It's really amazing how one can go to so much effort. Flying from South Africa, it's a really, really long way to get to America from here. Hire a vehicle, stay in a hotel, and do that repeatedly. And I remember I actually did all of this while I had COVID. And so few Americans are even going to the same effort who are right there, let alone anywhere near the same expense. And this is the thanks one gets, I know from some people. So, when I ask for a donation, it's not just holding out a begging bowl, just saying, please give me some money. I've already been there. I've already spent a lot of money trying to get you the best story. And I try to do that across the board, not just with this case, but with many other cases. Not quite sure I could get to the Titanic, but, what we're trying to do on this channel is put our money where our mouths are, which is be authentic. And to do that, we want to get the most original footage, the best fresh insights, and far more so than many other channels. So I hope that is food for thought. I mean, does that make sense? Do you see where I'm coming from? So if you've never hit the thanks button, consider doing so, and let's get started. So the economics are actually quite simple. The fuel costs each season cost around $1 million, and so OceanGate needed at least 4 paying passengers. That's a minimum of 2 successful dives to the Titanic just to break even. By the way, that comment about the $1 million comes from Stockton himself. It's what he said to David Pogue. And we know that that final season he had journalists and influencers on board, none of whom were paying anything. And it was the final season was a washout. And so the final dive from the final season was sort of included people who were paying these big ticket prices. And so if Stockton didn't do a successful dive on that final dive, he was going to be another $1 million out of pocket. And probably his already impatient investors were going to pull the plug. So can you see what the pressure he was facing financially?
Are you making money on this operation?
No. It's a very unusual business. It's its own category. It's a new type of travel.
Stockton Rush is the CEO of OceanGate, a company that offers dives to the Titanic in a one-of-a-kind carbon fiber submersible for $250,000 per person.
Who are the typical clientele for these missions?
We have clients that are Titanic enthusiasts, which we refer to as Titaniacs. We've had people who have mortgaged their home to come and do the trip. And we have people who don't think twice about a trip of this cost. We had one gentleman who had won the lottery.
And then where was he when he was sort of dealing with that final fatal dive, dive 89? He had a billionaire on board. Who better to have if you're in a financial crunch? Plus 2 more moneyed clients. He's got 3 tickets ready to be punched. Each one is $250,000. Stockton knew that the sub was damaged, but he also knew he could dive damaged. So maybe he could get away with one more dive, one last dive, because around $1 million was on the line. $1 million to be lost, not necessarily gained. If he didn't dive, but if he did dive, then he wouldn't necessarily owe another $1 million.
Are you making money on this operation?
No. So not yet. People might say, hey, that's a lot of money, $250,000. But we went through over $1 million of gas.
So there you have it. Now let's deal with the economics that revealed 2 crucial insights. Number 1, Stockton's attempt to contain overhead costs. So the key psychological insight here isn't about common sense or safety. It's not just that. It's also the ability to walk away from $1 million. Could you do that? Not so much profit. That's not going into his pocket. That's what's not going to leave his pocket. That's paying off OceanGate's already colossal credit card debt. Number 2, the design was driven by cost saving. Stockton was well aware that if the main costs were from the ship, as well as moving the sub from place to place, well, if your sub was light, it was easier to move and easier to ship, but more importantly, cheaper to move, and you could get a smaller, cheaper ship to ferry it around, to drop it into the ocean. So do you see, if you understand the Titan sub through the perspective that it's a business enterprise above all, well, it's supposed to be a cash cow in the ways venture capital is supposed to make one not only rich, but very, very rich. Well, then suddenly the whole dynamic surrounding the Titan sub changes. All the talk about the beauty of the deep sea and the science and how interesting the Titanic is, well, it pales in comparison to the avarice that's driving it, which is trying to use the Titanic as a lure, a way to lure people into paying princely sums just to get there, incidentally, in the deep ocean.
You know, he came from privilege. There's no doubt about that. He was a graduate of Princeton. Not the strongest student academically, but he obviously got an engineering degree.
Stockton's grades are shown on Netflix, and what's clear is that he wasn't the strongest student academically, not even close. And look at his grades for economics, an F. It's also interesting, and that's actually what he got the worst grade for. It's interesting that, you'd think in the area that he was the most interested in, the most invested in, economics was the area that he performed the worst in, certainly academically. But you know what they say, a little bit of education can be a dangerous thing. Stockton may have been foolish, but he was no fool. And let's face it, if anyone was informed of the true situation, he was. He knew the hull was compromised. He knew what had happened to the scale models that had been tested to destruction. He knew he was walking a tightrope with this particular vessel. Also, the weather was terrible in that final season, but besides that, that final season seemed to be fraught with bad luck and misadventure. So why didn't he just call it quits? Answer, money. It was like a gambler at a casino, except a privileged gambler, one used to getting his way. But he's just lost a lot. What if he spins the wheel one more time? Maybe he'll catch a break. And isn't that what heroes are supposed to do?
But me, I choose to run toward my problems and not away from them. That's what... Because that's what heroes do.
Is the psychology starting to make a lot more sense now? Is it starting to actually feel not as strange or as mysterious as you first thought? Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.